Hello and welcome. I'm Lorianne Lumby with Authentic Freedom Academy, www.authenticfreedom.love. Thank you for joining us today for our weekly spiritual service. And we will go ahead and dive right into today's topic and into today's session. And the theme today is the forgotten gifts of the feminine. And so that's what we're going to be spending our time and our energy on today. And before we begin, I invite you to join with me in a centering meditation practice to help us arrive at this moment, to be present to our own journey, our own intentions. And so to do that, I invite you to close your eyes. And with your eyes closed, I invite you to draw your awareness to your breathing, to be conscious of each breath as you draw it in and to each breath as you give it release. Following the movement and the rhythm of that breathing as you draw it in and as you give it release. As you draw it in and as you give it release. As you maintain that attention on your breathing, become aware of how the rhythm and the movement and the intention helps to bring you into a quiet, more peaceful place. And as you are tending to that breathing, becoming aware of things falling away, worries, preoccupations, your to-do list, any fears or anxiety that you might have, or remnants of conversations that have taken place throughout the day. To simply allow those to fall away as you continue to maintain that attention to the rhythm of your breath. Drawing each breath in and giving it release. Drawing it in and giving it release. And we'll just join together in a moment of silence as we allow ourselves to arrive in this moment, in this space, with our personal intention for joining this circle today. And so we'll begin that moment of silence now. And from that place of centered and attentive calm, I invite you to listen to these words from the prophet Isaiah. And in particular, I invite you to hear these words as if they are being addressed to you and about you. That these words are speaking on your behalf and for you. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon her. She will bring forth justice to the nations. She will not cry out or lift up her voice or make it a street. A bruised reed she will not break, and a dimly burning wick she will not quench. She will faithfully bring forth justice. She will not grow faint or be crushed until she has established justice on the earth, and the coastlands wait for her teaching. Thus says the divine, who created the heavens and stretched them out, who spread out the earth and what comes forth from it, who gives breath to the people upon it and spirit to those who walk in. I am the source and creator. I have called you in righteousness. I have taken you by the hand and kept you. I have given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes of the blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. I am your source and your creator, and that name, my glory, I give to you. See, the former things have passed away, and new things are coming into being. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. I chose these words from the prophet Isaiah because I think that they speak profoundly to our calling to be a sort of compassion and love in our world. A calling that our culture wants us to believe is about shaking bushes, screaming from the mountaintop, waving banners. But what Scripture tells us is that a more effective way of bringing forth a new world is a way that is gentle, that is kind, that is calm. And this is a flip on how many of us have been raised in Western culture. I should say, any of us who has been raised on a planet that has been ruled by fear, power, and control. We have been told that it is through violence and war that change is brought forth. But that is not what the Scripture says. It is also not what history tells us. The greatest positive movements that have happened in our world have been done quietly, gently, collectively, harmoniously, with a spirit of understanding and mutual learning at the heart of it. This provides for us a contrast between what I would call the unholy masculine or the wounded masculine and the divine feminine or the holy feminine. And in a world that for 5,000 years has been imprisoned by one specific paradigm, we have forgotten the gifts that support us in finding positive change in a way that does not do harm, in a way that is governed by love and comes forth from wisdom. That leads me then into the topic for today's discussion, which is the forgotten gifts of the feminine. And this is certainly not an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are many other gifts that I have not listed here, but for today's purpose, I have listed 9. And I want to talk about those 9 gifts, and then we'll have an opportunity in the circle to discuss that and kind of see where that leads. So the 9 gifts, as I have them listed for today, are inaccessibility, silence, waiting, allowing, yielding, non-action, stillness, magnetism, and death. So I want to start with inaccessibility. We live in a culture right now where we have been conditioned to believe that our value is dependent on our ability to be seen, that our value is dependent on making our voices heard. We have been raised in a culture without boundaries that says that we need to be available for everyone who needs us at every time. One of the forgotten gifts of the feminine is inaccessibility. It is the ability to be with ourselves, to be in our own power, and to not be constantly seeking outside of ourselves for attention. It is also the power of that is spoken of in the phrase that says, absence makes the heart grow fonder. If we are not out there making ourselves available to everyone at all times, in reality, our value increases. We are perceived as of value when we're not available to everybody all the time. And I'll just use a really simple example as in that I think demonstrates this, and the example is dating. When we make ourselves unavailable, there is a sense of mystery that begins to surround us. When we're not available all the time, when we're not available immediately for intimacy or other deeper connections that can happen in the context of a relationship, then there is a need that is created on the other end of that dynamic. There's a desire, there's a want. We aren't desired or wanted if we're always available all the time. It's easy to be taken for granted. So when we make ourselves unavailable, when we make ourselves inaccessible, then people begin to want us. They begin to want our gifts. They begin to want our presence. They begin to want our sharing. Inaccessibility is the first of the forgotten gifts of the feminine. Silence. Again, we live in a culture that says we are of value when our voice is being heard. We are of value or we can become famous when people are hearing us. We're also raised to believe that it's our job to convince people of things, or to argue our point, or to make our voices heard. Absolutely, there are times when we do need to speak, when we do need to make our voices heard. But there is also profound power in silence. Allowing ourselves to create a space where we are inaccessible and where we are not speaking allows us to be in a powerful place of observation. It also allows us to be in a powerful place of trusting, or to live out the trust that is naturally inherent within us. When we're not speaking, we are creating space for others to find their way through either their own truths or their own deceptions. We are creating a space where people don't have to defend themselves or their beliefs or even their intolerances, and to suffer the consequences of those deceptions, those intolerances. We're also creating a space where people can learn their own lessons. When I put this in the context of what's currently unfolding in our world with the COVID-19 pandemic, and I know as a person who talks a lot, whether it be through my writing or my art or my social media presence, silence has become an absolutely critical power. In that silence, I'm able to just watch and observe. In that silence, I am able to create, again, that sense of mystery. And there is a gathering of energy, our own energy, that happens when we make ourselves inaccessible. There's also a gathering of energy within us when we allow ourselves to be quiet and to not have to respond to everything that we or see out in the world. This brings me to waiting. One of the most powerful gifts of the feminine is the ability to wait. And I think there is no better process to illustrate that than the process of gestation. There is absolutely nothing we can do when we find ourselves pregnant and expecting to bring forth a new life in our world. There is nothing we can do but wait. That new life needs 40 weeks, give or take, to come into a place of mature growth where it can come into this world and thrive on some level. We can't make that happen any sooner, nor should we. And we have to wait. The same is true of every process in our world. Any new thing that is coming into being takes time. It takes patience. It takes nurturing and care. The same is true of the endings. As we watch the world around us implode upon itself, I know I, for one, am tempted to say, hurry it up already. Let's get on with this. Down. But we need to wait. We need to allow that process to unfold in its own way, in its own time. And we have to be patient and trusting that it is happening exactly as it needs to happen. That then brings me into allowing, the fifth forgotten gift of the feminine. We live in a culture, again, that is about doing and making things happen and hastening things along. With the power of allowing, we are able to create and hold an open space for things to unfold on their own. Allowing also invites us into a place of trusting that what we need to fulfill our part of this life unfolding will be brought to us in the right time, in exactly the right way, and not because of our efforting. Now, that's a big mind blower in our Western culture, is that, wait a minute, we can just sit and allow for things to come to us. We don't have to chase after it. We can allow good things to happen in our life. We can allow the support that we need to come to us on its own in the time that it needs to. The more we practice this allowing, the more we see the truth of that power, the more we see the benefits of that power, the more we see the results. And we discover that what comes to us in our allowing is much more supportive, much more reflective of what we actually need, and it comes in exactly the way that we need it, not in some contrived, force, cajoled kind of way. These three pieces, waiting and allowing, then move us into yielding. And yielding, I would say, is like a softer version of allowing. Yielding is being aware of the resistances or the defenses that we have created around ourselves because of the way in which we have had to find ways to survive in this world. We all have our defense mechanisms. We all have those places of guardedness because of past hurts or past wounds. Yielding invites us to begin to let go of some of those resistances, to identify our defense mechanisms and begin to do the work of healing them so that we can really yield to what life brings to us. Because sometimes what life brings is unexpected. Sometimes what life brings is a leap for us. Sometimes what life brings is not necessarily what we would have asked for. But when we allow ourselves to move into that place of yielding, we're able to receive what life brings us without judgment. We're able to receive it with a trusting nature. We are able to receive it with open arms and also open eyes. So if what comes to us is not what we would have thought we would have chosen, yielding allows us to say yes and allows us to see how that might unfold. And I think many in this circle have had those experiences of life presenting something to us that maybe we wouldn't have chosen, but when we allowed ourselves to resistance and yield to that movement, we saw that it brought us to something more life-giving, more supportive and more reflective of our truth or of our journey. A really good example for me has been this COVID-19 shutdown. I'm not sure I would have chosen this for myself, but I'm finding in yielding to this time of being sequestered, of quarantine, social distancing, whatever you want to call that, in yielding to that, I'm really finding my soul's true rhythm. And I'm giving myself permission to sink more deeply into that. And it is out of that sinking that, ironically, these forgotten gifts of the feminine themselves. So that then brings me into number 6 and number 7 on the list, non-action and stillness. Again, we live in a culture that preferences or privileges doing. Success is earned by hard work. It's our job to drive and strive towards achievement so that we can receive and experience success as it's defined in Western culture, which is money, 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 power, and fame. Non-action invites us to do the opposite, which is not do, but be. And this we can think of in a lot of ways. But what pierces through in this moment is that it brings me back to the reading from Isaiah. A bruised reed we shall not break. We shall not make our voices heard on the street. When we are faced with a significant conflict in our human experience, when we are faced with that feels offensive or violent or not life-giving, our first reaction is to act or is to react. Non-action says, wait, don't react, sit with the trigger, spend some time exploring it, see what it might say to you, and then decide how you want to respond. Non-action says, wait, watch, observe, explore, gather information, seek understanding or knowledge, and then allow wisdom to inform if we act or if we simply allow or wait or yield. This requires the ability for number 7, which is stillness. It is only in being. It is only in the stillness of that place of wisdom and truth and peace within us that we find true answers, that we find guidance that is authentic, that we find a response that is coming from a place of compassionate understanding instead of reaction. Stillness allows us to simply be. Stillness allows us to enter into a deep state of mindfulness where we can really tap into higher truth, higher wisdom, higher understanding. So far we have inaccessibility, silence, waiting, allowing, yielding, non-action, and stillness. And these together is the magical formula for magnetism. When we live in a world that puts our energy out here in doing, action, speaking, making waves, reacting, shaking trees, trying to achieve. When we live in a world that puts all of our energy out here, we find that we have nothing else within. And the deepest power of the feminine is within. This is where our power lies, is inside of us, not outside of us, in the things that we do or say, not outside of us in the actions that we take, not outside of us in all the ways that we've been known. Our true power resides within. This is a magical formula that has been forgotten and that we are being given a profound opportunity to remember, make part of our being. This power of magnetism. To gather that power, we have to be inaccessible, silent, in a state of waiting and allowing, free to yield to what our soul will draw to us, non-reactive, in a state of quiet stillness. The more we give ourselves to that energy, draw our power towards ourselves, and it creates a magnet that draws to us everything that we need to fulfill our mission and our purpose on this plane. We do not fulfill our mission and purpose by going out and shaking trees, or by making our voices heard, or chasing after opportunities, or doing the hustle. We draw to us what we need by supporting and fueling our own inner power that then becomes a magnet that draws to us what we need. Now, in order to see those things that are coming to us, we have to have our eyes open and be observant and be free of our own judgment and preconceived ideas of what that means. But that pure divine feminine power is in that inner void within, that place within us that is nothing, no thing, empty, and yet filled with potential. And it is in being inaccessible, silent, still, in a state of waiting and allowing, non-action and yielding, that magnetism comes forth. Number 9 on our list is unrelated, but not unrelated to the previous 8, and this is death. The divine feminine, whether it is embodied, no matter what gender of human being it is embodied in, we all have this divine feminine within us. It is the divine feminine that stands at the threshold and is the guardian of the threshold between life and death. It is the feminine that literally brings life into the world, it is also the feminine that bears witness to the dying. And in order to live out the fullness of our human power, we have to be comfortable with the messiness of birth and the messiness of death. We have to yield to the pain of birth and the pain of death. We have to grieve the loss that comes with new life and the loss that happens with death. It is in that middle road between life and death where our power resides. And we are that gateway. We are that threshold. So as Isaiah reminds us, you are the servant which is upheld. You are the chosen one with whom the soul of the divine delights. The divine spirit is within and upon you, and you will bring forth justice in the nation. You will not cry out or lift up your voice or make it heard in the street. A bruised reed you shall not break, and a dimly burning wick you will not quench. You will faithfully bring forth justice. You will not grow faint or be crushed until you have established justice in the earth, and the coastlands wait for your teaching. You are a servant of love, and you are upheld and supported by that infinite, profound, compassionate love. So I'll invite us to take a few moments in quiet to reflect on what has been said so far here today, and then we will have an opportunity to do some sharing.